I couldn't believe all of this was gone after the fire. Every piece of old furniture burned to the ground, except for this antique buffet I pulled from the pile just one day before. So why the fire that day? Well, I'll share that story in a moment, but there's something else you don't know yet, and you may slowly discover this mystery as you watch. Today it's finally time to finish what I started, hoping that through this I'll better understand where I've been and where I'm going. This is a restoration story about hard lessons and finding a sense of closure in the ashes. There are some project pieces that require an explanation regarding the damage, but for this piece, I think the damage speaks for itself. At the time, I wasn't even sure this 100-year-old buffet or sideboard was worth saving. It had already been exposed to the elements. But I couldn't help but stand back for just a moment and stare at its current state, thinking this was once something someone was likely proud to have in their home for decades. I quickly realized this was going to be one of my most difficult challenges yet, but I have an idea for this piece. Maybe instead of something delicate and ornate, I could repurpose this into something a little more utilitarian while still preserving part of its unique history. We all see the same problem a little different. Some would likely scrap this entire piece altogether, while others possess the skills and patience to completely restore this back to its original condition. For this trash find, I'll find myself somewhere in the middle of those two polar opposites. This old buffet is clearly infested with bugs and heavily damaged from the elements, and because I don't quite have a vision for repurposing this piece, I'll draw out a few renderings for the project. As I began disassembling what was left of this buffet, there were several times I wondered if I should have just left this in the pile that day, where everything else was burned. Maybe after 100 years or so, this piece had served its purpose and was finally ready to be hauled off to the landfill. But small discoveries continued to tell a story worth saving and kept me motivated. As it continued to storm on the day that I began this project, I couldn't help but think about the promises fulfilled after every storm, how something far more beautiful follows, and we will see evidence of this. But at the start of this restoration, all I could see was the mess, the dust, the damage, and the uncertainty. And yet, at the beginning, I must still believe I'm working towards something better. But like every good restoration, it doesn't start with beauty. It starts with the painful steps of breaking down the old things before something new can take shape. Many decisions along the way will yield failure, but through the failure, wisdom and learning often emerge. What's left of the top of this buffet is this jointed lumber which served as the substrate. The thin layer of veneer was missing, and because this was exposed to the elements, I'll clean this off with dish soap and a pressure washer. After soaking this with water, I'll clamp it down flat, hoping to eliminate some of the cupping or the warping seen earlier. I've spent years learning how to repair and refinish furniture during my restoration journey, but I still have so much more to learn, and I'm grateful for a long-time partnership with today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community with thousands of classes for creatives, by creatives. There are skills that I've learned through Skillshare that extend far beyond just the restorations. I've learned more about other crafts, and even better techniques for filming, editing, and storytelling. I understand many of you have no desire to grow an audience on social media, but maybe there's a skill or a craft that you've wanted to learn more about for a long time. It might be sewing, painting, creative writing, or woodworking. Skillshare has thousands of classes for all of these, and I love how the classes are structured in simple outlines, making them easy to follow. With expert instructors sharing practical tips, I was able to grow my skills at my own pace. Think about your own hobbies and unique set of skills. It likely took years of developing your skills to set you up for success. Like me, many of you probably wished for a resource like Skillshare that offers thousands of online classes to help you develop your creative skills faster. So whether you're starting a new venture or just looking to level up your skills, Skillshare can help you unlock your potential. I would encourage you to check out Skillshare to see if they offer classes related to your own specific interests. And the first 500 people to use my link in the video description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So get started today, and thank you Skillshare for sponsoring this video. I've never considered myself to be a woodworker, and when I found this trashed furniture on the side of the road, I didn't imagine I would be breaking this down to its core to slowly rebuild it piece by piece. But that's what happened, and I'm glad it did. This was an opportunity to use many hand tools that I don't often use when refinishing old furniture. The panel for the back of this buffet is beyond repair, so I'll replace it with a sturdy piece of fiberboard. These repairs will slowly revive the overall structural integrity of the entire piece. I'm not sure this was ever perfect to begin with, but as I slowly build this back and add new pieces, I'll do what I can to make sure everything is as square as possible. As was the case with many of the parts, these veneered side panels were beyond reasonable repair, so I'll replace these with new plywood. This is where the vision for this piece began to take a different path altogether. I'm curious if any of you have discovered the mystery behind this project, and if you want a small clue, look beyond the project itself. Clamping this top section flat while it dried certainly helped eliminate the warping caused by the rain and the sun, but it's still not perfect. To stay with a more practical, utilitarian vision for this piece, I chose not to add new veneer to the top, but instead level off the jointed lumber with an electric planer and an orbital sander. I removed all of the ornate door and drawer pulls and placed them in white vinegar. This will help loosen the dirt and oils before a gentle cleaning with a brush. The door fronts consist of several layers of beautiful veneer and delicate molding. I desperately wanted to save all of this and made an honest attempt to do so, but what I soon realized was that there were just too many areas already destroyed by bugs, water, mold, and mildew, so I decided to remove everything down to the substrate and start over. As I sand these doors in preparation for new veneer, looking back on this project, I wish instead of re-veneering these doors, I would have gone with more of the industrial utilitarian look by embracing the natural contrast between the different wood species that make up the substrate. Today, with each new restoration project, I find myself being drawn even more to just preserving the natural beauty of the unique colors and grain patterns of all wood species. But what I'm about to do will contradict my previous statement, and there's a reason why. Repurposing this furniture piece while salvaging as much of the original lumber as possible will require planing the surface so that it's nice and flat for daily use. Using a planer and a belt sander would likely never be used to restore old furniture the right way, but I'm constantly reminded with every decision I make that this piece was just one day away from being a pile of ashes. In some places, I removed the veneer completely, but there were other areas where I was able to just secure the loose veneer using a glue syringe. This was a great project to continue practicing restoration techniques that require refining. Every time I begin restoring or at least saving and repurposing an old piece of furniture, it feels a little like opening a book I've read before, but with fresh eyes. The wear and tear tells stories I didn't notice before, and through the process, I've started to realize that I'm not just learning how to repair wood or strip paint. These old pieces have a way of teaching you things about patience, about hidden beauty, and about how even the most broken things can be made whole again with time and care. And maybe that's why I keep coming back to this work, not just to bring new life to forgotten furniture, but also to reflect on the parts of my own story that needed some kind of restoration. So this isn't just a challenging project to stay busy, it's an opportunity not only to reflect, but to look ahead with steady hands and a little more understanding than I had before. Once cleaned out, I'll use wood filler to fill in these voids that remain from the woodworm damage. Now that the hardware has had adequate time to soak in the vinegar, I'll gently scrub them with a fine wire brush. These were likely plated, and my plan was to paint these all the same color with a fresh coat of metallic paint. But once I discovered the beauty beneath, I found that I liked the contrast between the gold and silver colors, so I decided to clear coat these just the way they were. As is the case with woodworking, I don't often do metalwork, so perhaps there's a better way to repair these hinges, but with some basic tools, I think I can at least make these function once again. I had mentioned that this furniture, likely around 100 years old, was saved from a fire. I find discarded furniture on the side of the road often, but what makes this story unique is that the pile of furniture where this piece was found was intentionally lit on fire the night after I pulled this piece from the pile. The fire was so big that the surrounding mature trees had to be cut down soon after. But that still doesn't solve the mystery that makes this restoration story so special. I have these leftover pieces of walnut veneer, just enough to cover the two doors, so I'll use an X-Acto blade to cut this down to the approximate size of each door. To apply the veneer, I'll brush on some contact cement to both the door panels and the back sides of the veneer, then clamp them down as flat as possible. What I later realized was that the door panels were not yet flat enough for this application, and I didn't use large enough wood pieces to clamp this down. This would eventually require more veneer repairs. When learning any new craft, we sometimes learn from watching others who are more experienced, but many steps are often just self-taught. Through my own restoration journey, I've done some things right the first time, while others were learned the hard way through multiple failed attempts. This drawer front damage was probably the most intimidating part of the project for me. I had never done anything like this, but knew there was no better way to learn than on a piece found in the trash. What I learned through this process was just to be patient and take my time chiseling away the old damage to make room for a new piece of lumber to take its place. As I glue down the original veneer on this drawer front, there's something I should have asked at the beginning of this project. Based on your own skill level, would you have left this piece on the side of the road, brought it home and painted it, or do you have 30 to 40 years of restoration experience and been able to restore this back to its original condition? At this point in my own restoration journey, I still find myself somewhere in the middle of all of that. The bottom drawer still needs veneer, so I decided to try and use what's left of this walnut veneer that was removed during a 1960s coffee table restoration. Looking back now, I wish I had used a new piece of veneer with better looking patterns in the wood grain. Now that the new lumber is glued in place, I'll slowly begin to chisel back the excess, using hand sanding blocks to match the contour of the rest of the drawer front. Without question, the most time-consuming part of this entire project was hand sanding the old finishes off of each of these 4 legs. There were many times recently that I almost scrapped this entire project, but each time I was reminded of all the hours spent just sanding these legs. I knew instead of quitting, I had to make something out of all of this work. Without revealing the mystery, here's the final clue behind the mystery of this project. Something many of you probably didn't see coming. I'm preparing to paint the body of this buffet, and I'll tell you why. After replacing the side panels with new plywood, at the time I couldn't see a way that all these pieces could be stained and blended without looking blotchy and unfinished. Even after all this work, I couldn't imagine this furniture piece being used in someone's home without the concern for remaining critters, mildew, or even worse, mold. This instead will be repurposed for my workshop for more storage. And if you've seen my shop, you know that I like darker, more industrial looking utilitarian pieces that still hold many stories and a deep history. So I'll use the HVLP sprayer to spray this piece first with a white water-based primer, then several coats of black paint. On this channel, I've never once criticized those who paint old furniture, but these days I prefer to use natural-looking finishes on just about anything made from wood. So do I regret painting part of this antique buffet? Well, that's part of the mystery that I can now reveal. From this moment on in the video, it's now 2025, but you see, the day I found this old buffet in the trash, that was June 26, 2022. This has been a 3-year project, and during my first year on YouTube, I painted several pieces of old furniture, thinking that's where I'd find success. Soon after that, I began finding more joy in removing layers of paint from old furniture. So over the years, I continued to store this old buffet in the back of my shop, wondering what I would do with it, and if I should even finish this project that I once started. Along with the existing damage, there was now new damage caused by moving this around so many times, something I'm not proud of, and due to poor application techniques, the new veneer had bubbled up in many places. If you've been on this journey with me for some time, then you may have picked up on the mystery of all of the changes in the workshop throughout this video, and I never said the mystery would be an easy one to solve. Now, think about your own situation you find yourself in. Looking back on the unfolding of my own 3-year restoration journey, there are many things I wish I had done differently. I strongly considered not even sharing this project, but I realized I'm human, and this was an opportunity to find beauty in the ashes. Through it all, many lessons have been learned. Burdens somehow slowly became blessings, and tears led to triumph. In a strange way, after the storm, it took me 3 years to realize the promises of beauty and restoration. Now I'll do the final sanding, stain this buffet, and put it all back together. 3 years ago, I wish I had the Surf Prep 5-inch orbital sander, along with the 3x4 sander. It certainly would have made this job much easier. The sponge-like sanding pads conform to and protect the profile along the edges. This certainly would have saved me hours of time sanding these 4 legs. Although today I would choose a completely different path for this project, I decided to stick with my original plan and stain the remaining wood with a dark, oil-based penetrating stain that will provide only a subtle contrast against the black paint. This will make blending all the different colors of the wood species much easier. I'll sand the drawers and doors both inside and out in preparation for the same stain color. At the moment, I don't know if this will be a forever piece in my workshop. It won't be perfect, but at least now it functions as it should. That's not to say that one day it won't be used again in someone's home for its intended purpose. But for now, I'll use this in my shop for more storage, and more importantly, as a reminder of something I'll share with you in a moment. As I finish staining the doors and the legs, a little too dark for my own taste now, I wondered if one day I'll be crazy enough to make another video, completely removing all the paint and the stain from this piece, and instead just clear coating all the natural wood. After all, I have learned that it's never too late to make changes. Once the stain has dried, I'll protect this piece with several light coats of clear shellac. In between several coats of clear shellac, I'll spray on a toner to help blend the different colors of the wood species. I'll then apply this Gilboy's Antique Gold Wax using fine steel wool. After about 20 minutes, I'll buff the wax using their open weave cotton buffing rag. This will help reduce the heat that melts the wax and creates streaks during friction. In the end, this old buffet didn't just survive the fire. It survived my own doubts, my delays, and all the failed attempts along the way. It may not be perfect, and it may not be finished the way I would have done it today, but maybe that's the point. My name is Barry, and thanks for joining me. Remember to check out Skillshare in the video description for classes related to your own craft. I'll see you next weekend for another furniture restoration story, and every Wednesday for the midweek live session. What was once destined for ashes is now a reminder of progress, of patience, and all the lessons learned between where I was 3 years ago and where I'm headed now. So as it takes its place here in the workshop, scarred but standing, it carries more than just tools. It carries a new story, and it quietly reminds me, every time I walk by, that restoration is rarely fast, never flawless, and always worth it. Goodbye for now.